Hello everyone and welcome in. I'm echohack and today we're going to deep dive into the best classes that you can choose for Diablo Immortal Season 1. That's right, the launch of the game. If you're brand new to Diablo Immortal and you've never played the game, then you're in the right place. This video will equip you with all the knowledge that you need to pick your favorite class for launch and to also give you detailed information on the strongest to weakest classes with my personal tier list. Now, a bit of background before we jump in, if you're unfamiliar with the channel. So far, I've played all 3 test cycles for Diablo Immortal, including the Tech Alpha, Closed Beta, for a combined total for over 1,000 hours of gameplay. I know a little bit about this game, y'all. I've also spent the most time of anyone in the world as the Immortal, holding the crown during both the Closed Alpha and the Closed Beta. Now, finally, I'm part of Maxroll's Immortal team, bringing you the best guides for every aspect of the game. You can expect detailed class guides and guides for every system across Diablo Immortal coming before launch, especially from my Maxroll counterparts. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you go and bookmark immortal.maxroll.gg for those. Now, one of the first things you need to do in Diablo Immortal is choose your class. This is an important and semi-permanent choice. Now, down the road, you will be able to change your class with Diablo Immortal's class change system and retain the power that you gain with your character, but the developers have indicated that this system will only allow you to infrequently change your class. Now, we don't know the precise details around how this new class change system will work yet, but we can expect that the first month or two of game time will be spent with this first class that you choose. Now, Diablo Immortal has 6 classes to choose from. They are the Barbarian, the Crusader, the Monk, Demon Hunter, Necromancer, and Wizard. Now, right away, one thing to know is that all 6 classes in Diablo Immortal are extremely viable. Fundamentally, this is due to the way power scaling and stats work in Diablo Immortal, which offer all classes an equal shot at power. In other words, you should choose the class fantasy that best suits you and not worry too much about the tier lists. Now, every class has damage, defense, and support skills. There are no tank, DPS, and support roles in this game, although some classes are slightly better than others at a particular function. Now, that said, it will be valuable for you to have a unique class instead of just playing the same class that everyone else in your friend group or in your group is playing. If you're preparing for launch, especially with a group of friends, then make sure you get together and you chat about what class everyone is playing. Characters will benefit from buffing each other, and in this game, the same class's buffs do not stack together. So it is useful to have unique classes that can use each unique buff. Also, once you hit the maximum level and you hit a high Paragon level towards the end game, certain Paragon trees and PvP mechanics will make it beneficial to have unique classes in a party. We also learned recently from the devs that warbands are 8-player groups that will tie you and your closest friends together and seem to offer some kind of extra reward that we didn't see in the beta. Now, we don't know exactly what these warbands will offer at launch, but we're kind of expecting them to reward you for playing unique classes in your group or to play with your warband friends over other players. Now, we can divide the classes up into 2 main categories: melee and ranged. In general, melee characters are more durable than ranged characters, but melee characters have the disadvantage of needing to do most of their damage at a short distance. Ranged characters are, in general, squishier, but also able to avoid taking damage in the first place, since they deal the majority of their damage at a long distance. All in all, there are 3 melee and 3 ranged classes. For melee, we have Barbarian, Crusader, and Monk, and for ranged, we have Demon Hunter, Necromancer, and Wizard. Now, when you're selecting a class, the first and most important decision is to choose between a melee and ranged playstyle. This will determine how you interact with everything in the game, from leveling, PvE, or PvP content. Do you want to leap into the fray and smash enemies head to head, or do you want to rain hell from the sky? Choose whichever one feels more fun to you. Next, let's think about how you want your character to deal damage. Now, while each class is capable of doing both area of effect and single target damage, some classes truly shine at one of these roles. The spectrum here goes all the way from Demon Hunter to Crusader, giving each of these classes a unique mix of skills and strengths. In general, ranged-oriented classes have better single-target damage than melee classes because they're able to stay in combat with stutter step and move and shoot tactics. Now, let's briefly discuss the strengths and weaknesses for each class. First, the classic and iconic Barbarian. Barbarian has high area of effect damage and a fast-moving melee playstyle. It is by far the most durable class in the game with skills like Undying Rage, and it's a powerful PvP class. It also has several powerful buffs to offer in group play. But if you're fighting in the fray, it's difficult to avoid taking damage. As Barbarian, you will also be stuck with low single target damage, and you're going to be reliant on long cooldown skills to smash your way through your foes. Next up, the glorious Crusader. Now, the Crusader offers you a similar fast and blast playstyle to the Barbarian, but it leans on its horse to be able to mount up and move quickly. You'll do high area of effect damage at an incredible speed. Crusader is also perhaps the best group support class in the game and is a strong contender in PvP. But while Crusader has some of the best AoE damage in the game, it is also by far the worst single target damage as well. It often relies on long cooldowns to deal damage, and its primary attacks are some of the worst in the game, making it doubly bad when your skills are on cooldown. Now, rounding up our melee classes, we have the fast and disciplined Monk. Monk has some of the best mobility in the game with its teleport to target mechanics. This results in sort of a fast-paced melee combat that does good area of effect damage, and is also fantastic at grouping enemies up to be blasted down by your allies. It also has good party buffs and shields that it can offer allies. Finally, it's strong in PvP with some unique stuns that allow you to, say, relocate enemies on the battlefield. Fast-paced gameplay can also be a negative though, and playing Monk can require you to do some combos and requires careful inputs to execute successfully. Like most melee classes, Monk has mediocre single target damage and can have trouble with bosses, especially in solo content. Now, for the first of our range classes, we have the deadly Demon Hunter. Demon Hunter boasts, hands down, the highest single target damage in the game. It rewards a playstyle that relies on you constantly moving and judging the safe distance to remain at from your foes. It also has the strongest primary attack in the game with crossbow shot. In PvP, playing tactically can allow you to sit in the backlines and deal enormous amounts of damage while your allies take the brunt of the punishment. Even though Demon Hunter is extremely dominant from a damage perspective, it's also one of the squishiest classes in the game. It also has some of the worst escapes, making it hard to disentangle yourself from a melee brawl in PvP. It also doesn't really have a strong support build for group play, giving you fairly narrow choices for your builds in different game modes. Now, next up, we have the Commander of the Undead, the Necromancer. Necromancer is a pet class that does extremely well when fighting at range and smashing enemies with curses, bones, skeletons, and golems. It also has the best ultimate in the game, making its builds around primary attack and its ultimate fairly viable. In PvE, it has incredible buffs that you will want in your group. And to top it all off, it has an impressive kit of stuns that will leave your foes pretty salty in PvP. Now, still for a ranged class, Necromancer has certain abilities that are somewhat close range depending on your build, meaning that you're going to take a little bit more risk. It can rely also on corpses, which enable very powerful builds, but are an extremely limited resource. Now, finally, while Wraith form is an incredible form of mobility, the best build options for Wraith form clash with your mobility choices, somewhat forcing you down the road of an overall less mobile playstyle. Now, finally, we have the expert of the arcane arts, the Wizard. Now, Wizard is a ranged class with tons of area of effect abilities. It allows you to deal tons of damage by comboing massive meteors, orbs of frost, crystals, and more together with your other magical attacks. Now, Teleport offers you instant mobility, allowing you to enter PvP or PvE battles and surprise your opponents. If you can land it, Black Hole is devastating in PvP and can crowd control entire groups of enemies. Wizard also has huge laser beams and rays of frost, fire, and lightning that have the potential to deal the most damage in the game when enemies are tightly grouped together. But these massive magical attacks come with a cost. Wizard has long skill cooldowns that can leave you with only your primary attacks. Its reliance on combos don't always pay off either. And importantly, it has lots of skill shots, making it a class with a higher skill cap than many others. Finally, in group play, it lacks some useful buffs that other classes offer. Now, this is just a quick overview for each class. In further videos coming to the channel, I'll have full class guides for each class, covering builds, skills, starter gems, best in slot legendary gems, and more. Alright, now let's get to the tier list. Now, as I've already discussed, Diablo Immortal takes a fairly balanced approach to classes, but we did see some classes that in-game play stronger than others. One final reminder is that this is based on information from the alpha and the beta, so this is subject to rapid change at launch. So here it is. Let's unveil my tier list for Diablo Immortal launch Season 1. Alright, so in S tier we have 3 classes: the Demon Hunter, Barbarian, and Crusader. Demon Hunter is by far the strongest single target damage class in the game, and by far the most dominant PvE class. Barbarian's ability to survive and move with Undying Rage, Whirlwind, and Sprint make it both a PvP and PvE powerhouse. And Crusader's support skills and mobility make it dominant in group-based PvE and PvP as well. In A tier, we have the remaining 3 classes: Monk, Necromancer, and Wizard. Monk is a strong contender in PvP, especially with its ability to relocate enemies and an impressive kit of stuns. Necromancer might actually dominate the leaderboards early on in the game's PvE lifecycle, as pet-based gameplay is extremely strong early on in the power curve. But eventually it levels off once other classes catch up. Wizard is also extremely strong, but it can be tough to play with a high skill cap. Now, many folks think that Wizard might actually be the best class at challenge rifts on the high end, with their extremely strong AoE and single target damage. Now, it's important here to call out that B tier, C tier, and D tier are completely empty. There are no bad classes in Diablo Immortal, even at the high end of gameplay. In other words, whatever choice that you make, it's not going to be a bad choice. I doubt that you'll regret whatever class that you end up choosing. Now, even though this tier list clearly puts some classes above others, this is more of a ranking of what we saw in the beta of the game. I think you'll see this shift at launch, with certain classes getting new buffs, nerfs, some new abilities, new legendary powers, and that will tip the scales in certain classes' favor. Now, what's also important to keep in mind is that the meta for this game is extremely new. Even during the beta, we saw nerfs alongside players learning how to deal with the Barbarian and Crusader dominance in PvP. And we saw many players learn how to play together in new and interesting ways. So even if we see certain classes dominate in Season 1 at the launch of the game, we'll also likely see both meta shifts and changes to the game shift things for Season 2 and beyond. All of this to say, don't just pick a class because it ranks high on my tier list or somebody else's tier list. Pick a class because you like the playstyle, because you like the fantasy, and because you like the utility that it will offer your group. With Diablo Immortal launch on the horizon, have you picked your class out yet? What class will you play? Let me know down in the comments. Anyway, I'll see you at the next one. Peace.